I believe each of us have defining moments in our lives. The ones where we find ourselves at the crossroads of who we are. But what I found out is that how sometimes our own internal blinders don't accept the messaging that's intended to be received. There have been multiple examples of defining moments in my life, and it would be safe to say that I allowed them to be. But there are two that embody the learning and meaning of growth in my own personal maturation process. Both occurred at two different points in my life, but both became intertwined and challenged me to grow forward. So let me share one of those with you today. Now, I'm not just referring to the process of the initial concept of growth that might come to your mind as I just mentioned it, or what is outlined and defined in most dictionaries when one reads a literal definition of the word growth. I want to talk to you about gradual reminder, obstacles will test hope. See, this is the acronym that I want to share with you today that relates to situations that we all experience. See, growing up in Ohio, we had a saying about the weather. If you don't like the weather, just stick around. It's going to change. One morning you start out being bright and sunny, then within minutes, thunderstorms can alter the plans of the day. Doesn't this really resemble the perils of life? Initially, our mindset is one of embracing bright outlooks, and then the storms enter our lives. I recall a story of a father and a son that I heard many, many years ago that greatly influenced my life. See, I'm blessed that it had help guide my own transformation and progression as a son, a father, a grandfather, and a husband. See, it's centered around a young man. It's about 10 years old. He was sitting outside on his porch one evening, all by himself with his head down. He was just sitting there, looking at the rain coming down and waiting for it to subside, or even better, to stop so he can resume playing with his friends. See, the funny thing, the more the young man became anxious to resume playing, the harder and harder the rain seemed to fall. But out of frustration, he stomped on the wood board as he felt as though the rain was never, ever going to end. Just like the drizzle of rain turning into the thunderstorms of life that every one of us has or will encounter. But just like the young man, we find ourselves wondering, hoping, and praying that someday it's going to end. While his evening seemed long, many of us, you and I, have experienced the challenge on waiting on the rain to subside. See, I know all too well of the pain of growing, as I just mentioned, the unpredictability of the weather that challenges many things. But I had to wonder, was there another message that there was for me to understand and learn? I've adapted the methodology that many people can see, but not many have vision. Now, before I go any further, many could say that society has conditioned us for the expectation of instant gratification for most things that we all desire. However, you know, I know, Mother Nature and life has a pre-designed plan that we can't nor ever understand. See, the common thread between that little young boy that was sitting there waiting on the rain to subside and this grown man speaking to you today is that only through time can we really appreciate the forced stillness that storms usually bring in our lives. Let me get personal for a second. There was an impactful moment that occurred in 2003, specifically November 19th. That started out as a normal day for many, and really the day that became introduced to me as the concept that gradual reminders, obstacles will test hope. But before I get into this date mentioned in detail, I want to rewind the clock of life back about 45 days from November 19th, 2003. See, that was about the time when my father came to visit me when I lived in Arizona. He came to celebrate his 62nd birthday. It had become a tradition for him to come visit me every year on October 14th, his birthday. Another tradition during his visit was for us to drive the 6 hours, yes, the grueling 6 hours, to Las Vegas, Nevada from Phoenix, Arizona. We always anticipated this yearly trip since he loved the bright lights, and to test his luck on the slot machine. However, in hindsight, this trip seemed to have a different aura of excitement as he shared so many different topics I had no knowledge of. On this particular visit, I was coming off a professional disappointment in my career, as I had been passed over several promotions within the organization that I had given my blood, my sweat, and my tears to. While driving, he could sense that I wasn't myself. However, it was at that point he shared some words that didn't resonate then, but eventually would become a reference point that all things eventually work out. See, he told me, son, this will not be the last time a disappointment happens to you. Just remember, there will be many obstacles and challenges to become that will test your hope. He went on to say to me, you will always come out on top. Just hold on and continue to do things the right way. We had a wonderful time. But see, I'd never been much of a gambler. So the majority of the time, I spent my time people watching, but not my dad. No, no, no. And it turned out he did quite well on the slot machines that trip. Wouldn't give me any extra money, but that's okay. However, what became ironic driving back to Arizona was a phone call that I received from my employer. Yeah, the same one that didn't choose to promote me on multiple occasions. But see, this time, the tune of the call was quite different, as they decided to finally offer me a supervisory opportunity. I immediately said yes, as I was eager to accept the promotion, knowing in my spirit that this was not the right thing to do, nor was it going to end in my favor. See, at that point, while driving back, my father said that this decision may be one that I will regret. However, life will always give everyone a challenge to measure how well you respond to a gradual reminder the obstacles are going to test your hope. Growth. I was blessed to have an amazing birthday that year. Amazing celebration with him. But after a few days back from our trip in Vegas, back to Arizona, it was time for him to head back to Ohio to resume his chemotherapy treatment. What was not mentioned at the beginning of this story was that my father was battling cancer. However, his prognosis from the doctor stated that he had an excellent chance to beat this dreaded disease. With it being October, November's time frame, it was football season. And with it being football season at that time, we would talk every single Sunday about how both of our teams, the Dallas Cowboys and the Cleveland Browns, how terrible they played. And on this particular Sunday afternoon, November 15th, I called my father multiple times. However, he didn't pick up. After about 10 attempts, I felt nervousness in my stomach and tried to reach my mother to see if things were okay, but to no avail. But finally, about 5 p.m., my mother called me back, and she said that my father wasn't feeling good and that she took him to the hospital. She went on to tell me that the doctors believed that he had pneumonia and should be just fine in a couple of days. That brought a smile to my face. With that bit of news, I have to admit, I was feeling a bit relieved, although in my heart, I knew he had one heck of a fight ahead of him. But it wasn't long after that phone call, she called me back to tell me that the doctors came back in and said that it really wasn't looking good and that the cancer was beginning to spread rapidly. She went on to say that his organs were beginning to shut down and they will be placing him on a ventilator. Not knowing what to expect next, a steady stream of tears began to emerge from my face as I knew just a few weeks ago during his annual visit might very well be the last time I heard his voice again. That night, while tossing and turning in my bed, there were many thoughts that went through my head that had me questioning why was I experiencing this gradual reminder that obstacles will test hope at this point in my life. The next morning, November 16th, and with very limited amount of sleep, I was praying for any type of positive update on my father's condition. It was about the time I pulled into work as a new supervisor when my mother called and said that we needed to make a decision. She expressed the doctors were convinced that he would not make it out of this coma-induced state. Therefore, the family needed to make a discussion and a decision about removing him from the ventilator. Now, my first thought was one of wondering if he was going to make it out of this fog and return home. But reality sat in when she said, "Mark, we need to make this decision today." After a long conversation, I asked if we could wait till November 20th, just 4 more days. And I did this selfishly. And I suggested that date because November 19th, I was planning to celebrate my 39th birthday. My mother and I talked multiple times during that day about this ordeal. And I was holding on for hope that one of those calls, she would tell me he was going to become responsive. And there was no longer the gradual reminder that obstacles will test hope. As November 19th came, I woke up with a heavy heart and kept in mind that today was my birthday as I headed off to work. But what was still looming in my heart was uncertainty and anticipation. The anticipation that the decision was made that was quickly approaching the very next day, unless God provided a miracle. While adapting to a new position as a supervisor, I often train individuals, giving presentations. In my new role as the supervisor, my shift was crazy. It started at 5 a.m. and I found myself exhausted. I had not been able to get much sleep the past week, as in my mind, I was consumed with worry about my father's outcome. During that time, my children were in middle school. They were 8 and 9 years old. Their daily assignment, their daily responsibility was to call me every day at 3:30 to let me know that they made it in safely at school. So like clockwork, my cell phone rang at 3:30 p.m., November 19th, and it just happened on that day I was in the middle of delivering an award-winning training session to new employees and let the call go to voicemail. As I got back to my office, I sat down to check the message again with the anticipation of hearing, "Dad, we're home." But that was not the message that was left for me at 3:30 p.m. It said, "Hi, Dad. Aunt Pat called and Poppy died." Listening to that voicemail sent a shockwave through me, and I immediately tried to call my mother, who didn't answer. Rushing home, all I could think about was the anger, the rage that I had at myself for not being there. But more importantly, why take my father? And why on my birthday? As the years passed on, and with the help of my beautiful wife Tasha, There's one constant element with coming to the understanding of situations in life, and that's time, 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 time. See, that day, November 19th, is a day that many reasons for me to celebrate my past, my present, and not to fear the growth in my future. Although the journey of life is the test of hope, it also sends us daily messages that are designed to increase our visions and to assist in becoming stronger within. There shouldn't be a day that we don't reflect on the obstacles we've all overcome, such as the loss of loved ones, the loss of jobs, and any other disappointments that we all are sure to encounter. There's a saying that reads, knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. With the belief in growth, we can rest our hearts. We can rest our minds, knowing once we embrace that in each gradual reminder, the obstacles will test our hope we experience, is preparing us to live life with our true purpose and with no regrets and looking toward our future.